Hello and welcome to the very first Albion Online Dev Talk. My name is Henkys. I'm the game director of Albion Online, and with me is Jörg Friedrich, creative director.
Hello.
We're here today to talk to you a little bit about what's going on with Albion Online. This is our chance to show you a little bit the insides, the interior of the production. This is not very polished. We're basically straight from our desks, just talking about what has been happening, what will be happening, and giving you, the players and founders, a chance to see what's going on. Let's jump right into it. What have we been doing? What has been happening?
Brutus has been happening, right? That was the last huge content update we did. And what's your favorite thing in Brutus?
My favorite thing in Brutus? Well, personally, I love that we had the chance to fix a bunch of the convenience issues of the game. Like we launched the beta knowing that we would have to do these things, and the chance to add things like the repair all button, right? Everyone.
Yay!
Yeah. Finally. That is not so much of a hassle anymore. The bulk deletion of emails, the shift click to move inventory items. All these things were things that we could do because we knew we had to do them during beta. So we did them kind of blind. We just knew we had to launch them eventually. And then obviously the Undead. I mean, what was do you have a favorite?
Yeah, we launched the Undead gateways, right? That was basically my main job, to take care that these are going to go into the game. Those are the second iteration of gateways we did, and I think they're getting better and better each time we do them. So I'm pretty happy with them, obviously. The thing that made me the most happy was actually seeing a player hours after launch with an undead horse riding around. So that guy somehow had managed already killing the Necromancer boss, which has not that high of a chance to drop the Necromancer juice, taking a horse, going to the settler, figuring that out because it wasn't told anywhere, right? Figuring that out, going to a settler and crafting an undead horse. And he was so proud of himself. He was riding for hours on Queen's Marketplace around the bank, showing off.
I mean, it's a cool achievement, and it's these small things that players discover, and we can always rely on them to discover them.
Yes.
You can totally trust our players to discover every little thing.
You're very smart.
You're very smart, because we don't explain a lot about the game. That's definitely cool. I mean, similar to the Santa hat around Christmas, the first time they started showing up, and seeing how much that little detail adds to the game.
There was that player called Rosalia.
Yeah.
And he actually managed to go into the group dungeon because it was a group gateway, right? Balanced and made for five players minimum. And he sent me a video, also I don't think a couple of days after launch, to inform me that he managed to get all alone to Uncle Frost and get a Santa hat.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
And it's awesome how these small things get people active in the game and engage with the game. It's very cool. So yeah, we've launched the Brutus update with it, the gateways, and the gateways were another thing which we already knew we wanted to do before the launch of beta, but we didn't have a chance to do so, and we thought we can start running the tests, seeing how the game economy runs without it. But now we started implementing them. So let's talk a little bit about gateways and why gateways.
So when I started here, that was the first topic that we talked about, like how can we improve the dungeon experience and what are the issues with the way the dungeons are built so far. So when we looked at the dungeons back then, what I found that didn't quite work was actually that they were built with linear experience and balanced for a certain amount of players and tiers in mind. So we basically had dungeons that were called solo dungeons, and were meant to be played by one player. And we had group dungeons that were meant to be played by 5 players. But what was actually happening was that there were a lot of players. And dungeons that actually had a beginning and an end didn't quite work in staging, because what could happen was you enter a dungeon and it's empty because it just had been farmed empty, right? And there's another group in front of you or behind you. And there were things like what we call the mob race, where people actually were competing and trying to take each other over to kill the next mob and basically steal kills from each other. And all of that was neither very fun
Yeah,
nor was it the intended experience, right?
Exactly, and you had other problems as well, like the boss camping, where one player would just sit on the boss, and then the other group would play through the dungeon and like do the whole experience, and then we just deprived of the boss, which also wasn't cool.
So then, looking at this, and then thinking how could we improve this, there was one thing very obvious because something that had been introduced, I think, during Summer Alpha were the Hellgates. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And the Hellgates obviously worked very well, where people, as a defined group, entered an area and then fought their way to the boss. And although the Hellgates have a PvP component, we thought, hey, this could also work pretty well for our PvE. So what we did was we divided the dungeons and said, like, okay, there is a dungeon, that is the area that you enter first. And that basically works like the open world, because we're going to have lots of different people here. We're going to have groups. We're going to have people that don't work together. We're going to have people that want to work together in one area. So they basically work like the open world. People can come from different directions. They can enter the dungeon from different entries, and they can farm mobs there. However, inside the dungeon, they can find mobs that we call the gatekeepers, that are special mobs, kind of mini bosses. And if you kill them, they will spawn a portal. And this portal basically works very close to the Hellgates, where you enter your very private, dedicated dungeon that only you or you and your friends can play. So it can be designed for one player, it can be designed for 5 players, and we can make sure that groups that enter this dungeon get the experience that we designed it for.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a big part of it. We wanted to improve the PvE experience. They're still limited, so they're not an infinite place where you can go and get infinite silver or something like that. You still have to find a gatekeeper and kill it, and they don't spawn in infinite amounts. So the beginning gameplay starts in the dungeon, and this is where you can have your PvP and your PvE, and you're randomly playing together, like you said. So yeah, I think we're pretty happy with what we see from the gateways so far. Right now, they're implemented in a way where multiple zones are connected through a dungeon. This is something that we're looking at, whether we're going to keep it or whether we're going to have zones that have multiple entrances to the same dungeon. The last decision there hasn't been made. We'll get into future plans later. But yeah, we've done the keepers, we've done the undead. And as far as I recall, the reason why we did it this way is we two had this conversation at the beginning of production, where we said, what would the players be needing when we launched this? And the keepers came out just 2 weeks after beta launch, and this is why we thought a lot of you are going to be on tier 4, and the keepers are exactly tier 4 content, and the undead are the same thing. The undead are the zones that don't have keepers
tier
have
4 and
undead.
tier 6.
Tier 6, and the higher ones would be then appropriately for the players who are pushing further. Obviously, you've outdone our expectations and gone much faster.
Again,
but too
clever.
But for the most part, I think it's working out. When the new players joining get to see this content, and the higher end players are seeing more and more of these gateways as we introduce more of them. Now we've done the keepers, we've done the undead. Let's talk about what we do right now. Right now, one part is we're doing the heretics. The reason for that is we thought originally, these things take time, right? They take a while in production.
There's 2 reasons basically, right? One is originally we planned to launch now.
Yeah, exactly.
Which we won't, but we will talk about that later.
Yeah.
The other reason, is the heretics are at the beginning of the game.
Exactly.
And they are the entry experience. And there are lots of people that play the game already since the start of the beta, but there's still a lot of new players coming in every single day. And the first thing they see, the first experience they have are the heretics.
Yep.
So we thought they should get the same amount of polish and love than the keepers and the undead have.
Exactly. So this is not, the fact that we're launching the heretics now, it's not anything we're doing against the high-end players. It's more, we thought originally we'd be launching right now, and for giving the starting players a great experience, we wanted to have the heretics ready. And they will be awesome. What I've seen so far, they will be really cool. They should be great fun. So when the wipe comes, eventually, you'll get to see that as well, or you go back and play it now. The heretics are one thing we're working on. What we're also doing as part of that is we're working on an update we're calling Kador. And Kador is mostly about rounding off the PvE overall. We did the 2 gateways, or the 2 faction reworks, and we realized, okay, the mobs are cool now, the dungeons are cool now, but what about the logistics around playing a dungeon? And the 2 big changes, even more big changes, but the 2 big changes we're making is, one, we're reworking the death mechanic. We're unifying the way people die in Albion, so that no matter how you die, it's always the same, whether it's PvP, PvE. You'll be knocked down first, and once you're knocked down, other players can kill you if it's a PvP zone, or the creature you are fighting can kill you. And this means your colleagues have a chance to jump in to save you, and as long as one of you is still up, the creature will not get a chance to kill you. And this allows uninterrupted group play. This allows us to, basically, if one of you dies in a dungeon, it doesn't mean that your group has to interrupt and wait for the guy to re-gear and come back. You can just get him back up and continue fighting. We're also lowering the durability loss from knockdown, so you have a few chances to be knocked out before you have to quit. To make this even softer, we're adding repair on the go, which is pretty cool. We're adding workbenches that you can place in the dungeons, repair your gear, pick them back up, and keep playing. And yeah, that's gonna. Jörg's team has been doing a lot of play testing, and every time we noticed, okay, as soon as a few people die, it's getting very tedious. You need to carry spare gear, but that takes damage as well. The workbenches will deal with that.
Especially if you want to look at like longer dungeon experiences, right?
Yeah.
If you want to have people play something that takes 2 hours, 2.5 hours, it's super frustrating if you have to go all the way back just because your sword broke and you didn't bring a second one.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
basically it. And since you can't find items in the dungeons, we needed to find a solution for that. And I think the carryable workbenches, I mean, they're not going to be cheap. They have to be crafted, and I see a whole new field of business for me where I actually offer repairing other people's gear for money. Yeah. But we'll see about that.
See how
but in general, it's a
right now. I
convenience
think
thing.
you run a pretty good bag business.
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been looking a little bit into the PvP play. I've gone on a few roams. One of my favorite moments has been trying to escape in the black zone from a large mob of Russians who were chasing us down. We didn't manage to escape in the end. I can't remember which guild it was, whether it was Nilfgaard or Hammer and Sickle, or it might have been someone else. I don't know.
One of those really successful ones.
One of those large ones. Yeah. But yeah, it was good fun. Anyway, the last thing we're doing in Khador is that we're adjusting fame. So a lot of you have complained about the ways that we give fame to you. Well, for certain activities, for example, you can kill mobs that we intended for groups with a few people and gain large amounts of fame that way. And one thing we want to do is to introduce a group bonus, which will basically mean that you get a certain amount of bonus to compensate for the inefficiencies in playing and to actually reward you for tackling group content. And on the downside, we're lowering the base amount of fame. So if you do manage to kill these tough mobs in a smaller group, you're not getting quite that much fame. You're still probably going to get quite a lot, but it's more competitive with actually playing in the appropriate group size. Additionally, we're rewarding playing in PvP zones more, so we're introducing a loot and fame bonus in PvP zones to really incentivize playing out in the PvP zone. Yeah, so that's going to be Khador. Have anything to add? Did I forget something?
No, I think that's all.
Yeah. So that's Khador. That's the next thing we're working on. Maybe a few more things to mention. We're also continuing the path of convenience. There will be a quick salvage feature soon, and we're finally adding a functionality that you can see people who are obscured by trees or buildings. So you can finally see players who are running behind things, or mobs even. So that's going to help in playing the game a lot as well. And what we've already started, and that is continuing, is the split of the tablet and the PC UI. In Khador, you will be able to set the entire UI to be scaling, so you have a lot more of your screen space available. And we'll look further into splitting the PC and tablet UIs so that we can really offer you the best experience on each platform. That's the stuff that really is happening soon. We're doing more things, and we're obviously still in beta. We said we didn't launch for a reason. The reason is that in the background, we've made a big decision to rework one of the central pieces of Albion itself. We've basically decided to rebuild the world, and maybe you can tell us a few things why.
Yeah, I mean, around Christmas, when beta was running for a month, we came together and were thinking of if we really want to go ahead and now launch end of February. And when we looked at the game, and we also looked at we listened to what the community wanted from us, we felt that we should probably take some more time and take a step back and really develop the game that Albion has now become, right? Or a world for the game that Albion has now become. Because just from a historic standpoint, Albion has always grown, right? It's got bigger and bigger and bigger. Pretty much every
and thanks
from
for
alpha.
that. I mean,
yes, thanks.
There's so many of you. We didn't actually expect it.
I heard the number 80,000 backers today. If that's true, that's incredibly.
Yeah.
But thank you. However, so originally the game was planned for a much smaller community, and since we only have one world, we always needed to extend that world. And with all the success that we had, it gave us kind of the power and the time to take a step back and see, okay, what is that game that we have now, and how can we build a world that holds up? And what we find out is basically the world right now doesn't feel like a believable or a living place. It is built from a huge number of maps that are all very similar to each other. They are all crafted in a very lovely manner. I think the artists like Chris and Marcus, they did a fantastic job there. It looks really, really beautiful. But basically, every map is very similar to each other. And if you have a lot of very similar areas next to each other, they don't form a believable world.
Yeah.
Because if you want to have a believable world, you need something like the high mountains, and there is the city in the mountains, and the gigantic forest, and maybe there's a town in the forest, and maybe that town in the forest has more wood than the town in the mountains, and they start trading with each other. We don't want to tell too much right now, also mainly because we don't have anything to show right now, because we're all working on concepting this, and basically, yes, making plans on how it's going to look, making plans on how it's going to play, how we create this imbalance and this dynamic that we are after, that I think also many people expect from Albion. Mm-hmm. But right now we're in concept phase, and we're going to be for the rest of the month, I guess. And then we're going to start building things. Yeah, and then we're going to start showing things as well. Yes. Because this process is going to take a very long time. Like we already said, we've extended beta into summer, to really get that chance to make that world awesome. And to pass the time, we will show you an update on this. But for the moment, I think this is it. Yes. Thank you very much for your time. And we hope to see you in the next Albion Online Dev Talk. Goodbye.